All right, let's dive in. Today, we're heading right to the edge of what's possible in neuroscience, to a place where quantum physics and the human mind literally collide. We're talking about something called quantum dream interfaces. So let's break down how this incredible, almost science fiction idea could actually work. It all really boils down to this one kind of mind-bending question. What if we could actually use the bizarre, fascinating rules of the quantum world to understand our dreams and maybe even control them? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, but this is a serious hypothesis that scientists are exploring right now. Okay, so first things first, what's the actual problem we're trying to solve here? Well, neuroscientists know a ton about the brain when it's dreaming. What they don't know is the exact trigger, the precise little switch that flips you into lucid dream. You know, that incredible moment where you suddenly realize, hey, I'm dreaming, and you can take control. And this is where things get really interesting, because we're talking about a total shift in how we look at the problem. The old school classical view is all about the big picture, these huge rolling waves of brain activity. But this new QDI hypothesis, it zooms all the way in. It says the trigger isn't some massive wave, but an unbelievably precise tiny quantum event, a kind of micro-timer that has to fire at the exact right instant. And that brings us to the big idea here, the quantum dream interface, or QDI. Now, this isn't a gadget you can go out and buy, not yet anyway. It's a new way of thinking, a new playbook that suggests we could use these tiny quantum effects to finally get a handle on that switch into lucidity and maybe, just maybe, give it a gentle nudge. So how on earth could this possibly work? Well, to get it, we've got to zoom in again. I mean, way, way in, down to the level of single molecules inside our brain cells, because that's where we might find the key to this whole thing. So meet the potential hero of our story, a protein called cryptochrome. And the absolute best way to think about this thing is as a tiny biological quantum compass. It's a molecule that seems to be naturally sensitive to quantum forces, just like a compass needle is sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field. And look, this isn't just some wild guess. We have hard evidence that in birds, this exact protein helps them navigate. They can literally see the Earth's magnetic field using a quantum process. So that leads to the big leap, the big hypothesis. Could a similar protein that we have in our brains, called CRY4A, be acting as that super precise microtimer for our dreams? So here's the play-by-play of how this is supposed to go down. First, a little bit of light hits the protein. This creates a really special pair of electrons, a radical pair. For just a few millionths of a second, this pair is in a fragile quantum state. And here's the kicker. How that quantum state ends up can ever so slightly change the chemistry right around it in the brain. That tiny change could be the signal, the trigger we've been looking for. Okay, but there's a catch. If this quantum signal is real, it's got to be super, super faint and easily disturbed. So how could you possibly boost it or make it clearer? Well, researchers have a couple of really clever ideas for how to do just that. The first idea all comes down to this number, -2 degrees Celsius. That's it, just a tiny little drop in temperature. But how could it change that small, possibly affect a quantum process deep inside your brain? Well, the plan is to use this special hydrogel cap called CoolWave to just slightly cool the scalp. See, the biggest enemy of any delicate quantum state is noise, and in our warm bodies, the main source of noise is just heat. So by cooling things down just a tiny bit, you basically quiet the environment, giving that quantum signal a much better chance to do its thing. And you might think, what's a little cooling gonna do? Well, the predicted effect is actually pretty huge. They estimate that this gentle cooling could boost the signal's stability, what they call coherence, by about 12%. And that could easily be the difference between a signal that just fizzles out and one that actually flips the switch on a lucid dream. All right, if you thought that was cool, the second piece of tech is even more out there. It's called a Klein phase boundary, but honestly, just think of it like a tuning knob. It's basically a special kind of external device that you'd place near the head, and it would let you fine-tune the local environment to help sharpen and focus that quantum signal, making it even stronger. So, you've got this wild idea, right? But that's not enough in science. You have to be able to test it. How in the world do you actually design an experiment to see if any of this is real? Well, that's exactly what the researchers have done. They've got a master blueprint for how to figure it all out. And the plan itself is beautiful in its simplicity. You just tweak one thing at a time. You gently change the magnetic field, or you use the cooling app, or you turn on the tuning knob, And for each little tweak, you look for a very specific expected change in brain activity and in what people report from their dreams. It's clean, it's elegant, it's real science. So they're making some very specific testable predictions here. They're not just hoping something happens, they're putting numbers on it. And what's absolutely crucial is the emphasis on safety. Every single technique they're proposing is incredibly gentle, using power levels and magnetic fields that are well within established international safety guidelines. This is not about blasting the brain with energy. It's about a very subtle influence. So what's the endgame here? Is this all just a really cool lab experiment, or could it actually go somewhere? The researchers have a surprisingly clear roadmap for taking this from a wild idea on a lab bench to something that could potentially help people in the real world. You know, this isn't a race. They've laid out a really careful, step-by-step roadmap. It all starts small, with tests on proteins in a dish. Then you move to a small pilot study with a few people, then a bigger, more rigorous trial, and way down the line, you get to the ultimate goal. The possibility of creating a therapy for conditions like PTSD, a way to help people gain control over reoccurring nightmares. It's a long road, but it's a real one. And really, the whole spirit of this research is captured perfectly in this one line from the paper itself. It says basically that whether the experiment works or fails, we learned something huge. If the effects just aren't there, okay, then we've learned a limit. We've found a boundary where quantum biology doesn't seem to affect our minds. But if the effects are there, well, then we've just kicked open the door to a whole new field of neuroengineering. Either way, we win. Our knowledge takes a giant leap forward. And that really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What other quantum secrets might our own bodies be hiding?